So building 8, this is building 8, this is our steel reinforcement area. So we take the steel in at the far end of the building, we cut and bend at the lower end, and then we fabricate the cages and they're sent to the designated areas. Okay, so in here, this is lift shaft 5, this is cast earlier in the week, and currently we're just about to demold lift shaft number 3.
Shay's actually cut and bend all the reinforcement in the factory down at the bottom here. So this here is one of the lift shaft sections which is due to go in. I think this is lift shaft unit 6. And this here is reinforcement which is being cut and bent into the shape what Fergal needs to form. So all of this is designed by Tony G's back in our factory. Shay's then obviously have the capabilities which we discussed earlier of doing their own design work, and they kind of deal with our designer, and if they foresee any issues with any cut and bent reinforcement in the installation process, they pick that up with our designer internally. So this is lift shaft 6. Like Fergal mentioned, this one's lift shaft 5 to go on the landward side. And then the steel mould that you can see behind us over there, they're just putting lift shaft 3 out. So lift shaft 3 is probably one of the more complex moulds, isn't it, really?
Yeah. So we've got a number of couplers here, as you can see on the side here. Those couplers are there for second stage cast and for the in-situ works on site later. So
with that, basically, Shays have to cast if you remember when I was talking about the video on Saturday night that we produced, there's a cantilever which sits on top of the shield wall and sits on top of the in-situ walls we build on site. So what they do in there, then they remove the timber mould which is in there, and all the blue holes which you can see there, they're to screw in a threaded bar into. They then cast the cantilever over the side of that, and then that will be what supports the new deck, which we'll show you a little bit later. So all of the lift shaft sections have been produced out of this one steel mould. They make it out of steel just because of the durability, no flexibility in the shutters and things like that. So as you can see, it's very robust, very rigid. So like we talked about on Saturday night, Shays use the wire rope lifters, they screw into the top. So Shays have the capabilities to do all their own lift design, so they work out where the best place in a temporary position for that lifter is to be placed, so it doesn't cause any issues when lifting the piece of concrete, like it doesn't bend it in the wrong place, or it doesn't put stresses or transfer forces into it that aren't really warranted or wanted in the structure. You can see that they cast some of the voids on here. I'll probably let you do more of the talking of that really, and how you place all of them and what the purpose of them for is.
So they're all the well voids that you would have seen with Jack on site with the 27 holes.
Yeah. Right.
So those are 100mm spiral tubes on this side, 125 on the other side. Just slightly more congested there. That's the core of the mould. Yeah. So that has been lifted out of here.
Yeah.
Okay. To let us now release this and lift it up.
So what about the cranes? What sort of size cranes do you use to lift all of this?
We're currently doing a tandem lift here. That's 16 ton and that's a 32 ton lift. But this is the one we've designed to suit demold in this unit.
And what's the weight of this unit? It's about 30 ton, is it?
It's 30 ton finished, yeah.
So on the inside of the mould, Shays fix a Reckley form liner, which is where you get this imprint from. So to release the precast from the mould, Shays have got hydraulic jacks on these, so it's all controlled by the remote, which you can see on the left-hand side here. They slide the form liner, they slide the steel shutter back or the formwork panel back, and that allows us then to pick up the unit and remove it from its mould. So the weight of this lift shaft section without the cantilever is 30 tonnes. Okay. Once the cantilever gets added on, this is one of our heaviest lifts on site. It's up around the 55, 60 tonne mark. Okay. The only thing that's heavier than that is the deck. So Shays at the moment are using 2 gantry cranes to lift this unit because the gantry crane on the left hand side can only take 16 tonnes. Okay. So they have a 16 tonne gantry crane, which is the one on the left. Yeah. And they're doing a tandem lift with the other gantry crane on the right hand side. So we've got the 2 lift supervisors here, Darius and Arbutus. Darius is just up on the top making some adjustments to the chains. They've just tried to do the first lift and it's not lifting quite level, so they shorten the chains or lengthen the chains so that it lifts level from the platform so they don't damage any of the corners of the precast. And then you've got Arbutus down the bottom. He supervises the lift and makes sure the area is clean from the floor level. So with this, they land it down onto the trestles then, and then that allows them to work underneath the unit safely. So the trestles are designed to support the load of that structure which goes on top. Shays have their own designers and temporary works designers who check what sort of loads the trestles can take, what sort of size and shape the shutter needs to be able to withstand the concrete without buckling, etc. And they plan and manage that all internally. So this bed, that, like we mentioned earlier, it would have originally started somewhere down here. So they have to make the largest unit first and then cut down the mould. So as they cut down the mould, they're cutting down these mats, just so they're not using loads and loads of mats throughout this, really. The mats aren't cheap. They come from a supplier called Reckley. I think for the 2 sets of mats, it was about £15,000 alone, wasn't it? So that then forms the shape of the actual lift core itself. And then Shays attach bits on and take bits off, depending on what lift shaft unit they're creating. So if I just give you an example behind us over here. So that there is where the canopy will be fixed onto above the lift.
Okay.
So as you walk out the lift, then there'll be a canopy over the doorway. Okay. The reason why they put a plain face finish on that is so we can get a bracket fixed pretty much right to the surface on it. Yeah. So when Shays are planning and designing all of this for us, they need to take into consideration permanent fixings which go on later, how we're going to do that on site, and that's where all of the kind of the boxing out comes in then. Yeah. So you can see underneath now all the different voids, and they obviously finish up all of this now, and it allows them to work underneath. So they remove all of the kind of timber boxes that have been keeping things in position. Yeah. So there's no obstructions when we come to install the bars on the night. Okay. So when we go through the planning process, Shays prepare some sample panels for us. Normally they're about 1 metre by 1 metre, aren't they? Yeah. And they send them over to us in the UK then. And the planning officer comes out and selects the type of finish that they want on the different element of precast that we're producing. So throughout this, I think we've had, throughout the seawall, we've had 3, haven't we?
Yeah.
We had the brickwork where we've got in front of section C, where you've got all the arches of the old station building. Yeah. We've got the Reckley Hawaii on the lift towers, and then we've got the Reckley, is the Yukon that's on the seawalls?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which is the old kind of stone washed effect. Shays have also produced a lot of the visualisations on the panels for us as well. So down at Coast Guards, we had the old Coast Guards footbridge where we covered up half the structure, hadn't we? And we'd cast that into the panel. So in the design team from Shay Murtagh was sent a 3D scan of the front of the old Coast Guards bridge before it was covered up. They then work with Fergal to work out where on the formwork they need to put the different shapes and the different kind of formers so that when the concrete is poured and stripped out of this mould, it's got that imprint on the facing panel, which you've spent a lot of time really working on those moulds, haven't you?
Yeah, and then on this panel, the junctions here are the challenge. You've got a draped effect like a curtain, but when they meet in the corner, you've got an interface between 2 rubber mats that we were trying to give a nice tidy edge. So Arvidas and the team have done very well there.
And then once they've stripped the unit out of the mould, then they just spend a bit of time prepping it up and cleaning it up and dressing the unit to send over to us, so that when it's sent over to us, there's no kind of little cracks on the corners or chips where it's come out of the mould and a bit of it's pulled off with the mould.
Now we've seen some of the process inside the factory, I asked Fergal what happens once the precast sections have been made.
Right, so this will initially now go outside into storage. Then when Jack and the guys call it in, it goes on a trailer, goes from here to Dublin Port. It goes on a ferry then to Liverpool. And when it gets to Liverpool, we will pull it down. I think it's a 6 or 7 hour journey down to site. So the lads will park up, and obviously because this is possessions, they'll only come in as you saw in the video last week there. They'll come in as they're called in, basically. Okay?
I suppose it's the weight as well with us, really. Like previously, when we've had the compound set up at the top of the road, we had a 70-ton excavator and we could offload stuff. But the 70-ton excavator's now left, so there's no way for us to actually physically offload on site at the moment. The only time we can offload is when a suitable size crane comes in to actually offload it, and we don't want to be bringing cranes in just to offload units. We want to be bringing the unit just in time delivery. So,
what's the time on leaving here to get arriving indoors?
Probably about 3 days.
Yeah.
You know? 3 days.
He's crushed that down a few times when we've been in when we've been in panic
or
mode.
24 hours when we have
waiting precast.
When the bat phone rings, you know. We don't do that too often.
And roughly how many projects are you currently working on, like throughout the UK?
I would say about 50 at any given time.
50 projects?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
The logistics of running up to 50 projects at any time is daunting enough, but they also have to have the space to manufacture and store the precast. We asked Fergal how many buildings they had on site.
we've got 10 buildings.
10 buildings.
10 buildings, yeah.
And they're all very similar sort of size to this?
A couple up there are smaller, where we do the septic work and treatment systems and stuff like that, but the majority of them are this size. The tunnels next door are the exact same size building, and all the bespoke work where we'll see the deck, that's the same. So there's a lot of men, a lot of work going on.
Roughly how many men have you got working here?
I think there's about 250 employed in total, including in transport.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So I'm just here with Shay Murtagh at the moment, which is the Managing Director for Shay Murtagh. Do you want to just give me a bit of a brief introduction on what's going on behind us and the operation?
So I suppose the concrete starts down here, so we need the raw materials. And so what we've got here is our dredger on the left-hand side, and the dredger basically goes around the lake, takes out the sand and the stone from the bottom, pumps it through a pipeline back up into the pond here where the loading shovel takes it out. The loading shovel separates it into sand and stone, which then needs to be washed. And over in this machine over here, we washed all the stone to get it to the right grading that we want for our concrete.
So can you just give me a little bit of a background on why you do this internally and why you don't source materials outside of Shay's?
Yeah, well, I suppose it started here back around the 1930s. They were building a new cathedral in the town, and they needed some sand and some stone. Out in this farmland, there was a lot of rabbits, and they knew that there was sand underneath because of the rabbit holes. So from then it just intensified, and over the years then the concrete started, and then precast, and now the raw material is probably the least important thing that we have. We've got our great workforce and all our infrastructure and everything else, but it's really, really useful to be in total, total control of your raw materials. And remember, we use maybe 50,000 tons of sand and stone every year,
wow, yeah.
And we need every one of them to be the same.
Yeah. It's all about the same colour, really. The aggregates and the sand impact the colour of the concrete. So the concrete which we produce over in the UK is a slightly different colour to what Shay Murtagh produce over here, and you can see that from the in-situ concrete that we poured on site. But I suppose that there's a lot of benefits to the environment, obviously sourcing all your own aggregates internally.
Yeah, we talk about a lot about transport of raw materials into our process. So loads of like if we can minimise the amount of transport on the road, diesel usage, stuff like this. I mean, it's all part of what we're trying to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what we're doing, I suppose, is we're using all the raw materials, keeping it as tight as possible, and then we're just bringing the end product to the site. And yeah, so I mean, I think I said to you before, I mean, the first recorded piece of concrete that went to actually the Welsh, I think it was the Welsh Agriculture Show back in 1968, and we've got a picture of the Queen Mother standing beside a piece of what we call Rahardy concrete back in that day. So it's not unusual, Jack, for you to be here taking concrete from Ireland over to the UK.
Kieran's father Shay, who founded the company in 1971, started his career as a young apprentice carpenter on this site and bought the established facility in 1981, although a lot smaller then. At that time, the company manufactured precast mainly for buildings and the water storage market. While we see Shay Murtagh precast on infrastructure and rail, they are also the leading manufacturer and installer of pre-stressed and post-tension concrete storage tanks and have worked across the UK and Ireland on utility projects.